founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki jai. The sages, the four Kumaras, now reject their cursing of the two doorkeepers, Jai and Vijay, because they are now conscious that persons who engage in the service of the Lord cannot be at fault in any stage. It is said that anyone who has implicit faith in the service of the Lord, or who actually engages in transcendental loving service, has all the good qualities of the demigods. Therefore, a devotee cannot be at fault. If sometimes it is found that he is in error by accident or by some temporary arrangement, that should not be taken very seriously. The cursing of Jai and Vijay is here repented. Now the Kumaras are thinking in terms of their position in the modes of passion and ignorance, and they are prepared to accept any kind of punishment from the Lord. In general, when dealing with devotees, we should not try to find faults. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is also confirmed that the devotee who faithfully serves the Supreme Lord, even if found to commit a gross mistake, should be considered a sadhu or a saintly person. Due to former habits, he may commit some wrong, but because he is engaged in the service of the Lord, that wrong should not be taken very seriously. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmitam Yena Tasmai Shri, make this louder, Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Sva Padantingham Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raganatan Vidam Dham Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishaka Vidamscha Hare Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Jayatam Surato Pangor Mama Mandamatergati Matsarvasva Padambojo Radha Madana Mohano Debhyad Brindaranya Kalpadrumada Śrimad Ratnagara Singhasanasto Śrimad Radha Srila Govinda Devo Prestalabi Savyamano Smarami Śrimad Rasa Rasarambi Bamsi Bhattatatasti Taha Karshan Venu Svanar Gopir Gopi Nata Shriyestuna Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Brindavaneshvari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripasindubhyeva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rāma 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 Hare Hare. Yam vanayor dhamma madisha bhavan vidate vritim nuvatad anun manmahi nirvayilikam asmaso va ya uchito dirayatam sadando ye nagaso vayam ayun shamahi kilbisena. O Lord, whatever punishment you wish to award to these two innocent persons or also to us, we shall accept without duplicity. We understand that we have cursed two faultless persons. Sometimes we see very base, coarse, and gross argument or disagreement, maybe on the subway, hey, and it's kind of settled up like in a brute and obnoxious way. And we look upon this thing and just see it for what it is, something of a very low mode. Now, in terms of devotees, I want to speak of here the Supreme Personality of Godhead and Kumaras, who are the founder of who we celebrated Disappearance Day yesterday, Nimbarka Sampradaya, and Jai and Vijay, the two Vaikuntha guardsmen, it reaches the highest level of very fine analyzation from many, many angles of visions and varieties. And the Leela, or pastime, or interchange for such high personalities, gives us, the aspiring devotees, Prabhupada said, we are not devotees, we are not Vaishnava, we are aspiring to be Vaishnava. So we keep that humble always. It's very good. Pride cometh before the fall. If one imagines himself to be on a higher level than one actually is, especially imagining oneself to be a Mahabhagavat, then the result is that one will become insane. Insane with pride, and the higher they come, the higher they go, the harder they fall. That the many instructive lessons to be taken by the aspiring Vaishnavas, and let's say more encouraging or charitable ascending pilgrims on the path to perfection. There even can be accidents on the royal road. So here, after the immediate coarseness or grossness, the maces come down, we're checking you. You know, their facial expressions weren't very good. The four Kumars immediately snapped, "Who are you to forbid us, you know? You shouldn't be here having such a mentality. You should go and become sinful asuras and go down to the material world where the living entity have the enemies of lust, greed, anger, etc." And then the Lord didn't want the situation to escalate into something so that his gatekeepers would be vanquished for good by the anger of the four Kumars, and he comes and appeases the situation. And now we're seeing in the last, since verse 16, and this is the last statement of the Kumars, and now the Lord will speak in verse 26. The sages couldn't understand his words. The Lord's words had such deep meaning and profound implication. They were just amazed. They couldn't understand, and now they're speaking with quite higher realization, higher understanding that they shouldn't have committed, kind of a small offense. You could think that, well, they could say, where the four Kumars, and maybe Jai and Vijay would, oh, okay, all right, you can go in now, no problem, right? Sometimes you try to go into a place and, you should show a pass and say you can't come in. Oh, I got my pass. Oh, and they read, oh, okay. Just like at the marathon yesterday, there were these police barricades and they had signs from the day before. These are the only type of passes, restricted area, you cannot come in, and they had like 8 different passes, press, this, that, the other thing, and they had one which was like the most spectacular pass with rainbow colors, all access pass, So Kumars could think Jai and Vijay are doing their job, if just some type of New York City subway hooligan wanted to come into Vaikuntha, they would be right to check them, So now everything is coming down to order, and then it's revealed right off the bat what's going to happen. The Lord, what this is all about, in verse 26, they will be united with me. This is far out, they will be united with me in thought through mental concentration intensified by anger. in the case of Kamsa or Shishupal, Shishupal is ultimately Jai and Vijay later down the line, but Kamsa, he's not given the same status as Jai and Vijay, as Hiranyakashipu, Hiranyaksha, Ravana, Kumbhakarna, and Shishupal and Dantavakra. It's interesting to see how Hiranyakashipu arguably was the greater demon than Hiranyaksha, but they were both very close brothers. And Hiranyakashipu, his motivation to be so heinous and obnoxious was to avenge the death of his dear brother Hiranyaksha. But Ravana, he's obviously the greater demon. And Kumbhakarna, what was his relationship to Ravana? Just a friend. He was the brother, sleeping brother. And then Shishupal and Dantavakra. Dantavakra was a friend of Shishupal. But Dantavakra, not a very major demon. And ultimately, the Lord wanted to have, as Prabhupada reveals, a good fight. And who could offer a proper fight, mock fight, wrestling, boxing, to the king? It has to be a very qualified person. So no ordinary demon of this material world can offer a good stiff fight to the Lord. All the demons of this world could, just be handed over to Durga Devi, and in one flick of a finger, boom, finished. So Krishna doesn't come to Vinishayate Duskritam. He does, but it's for the sake of enlivening his devotees. He's coming for pleasure meeting with his devotees, paritranaya sadhunam. Actually, even more beautiful than the Lord killing Kamsa was his dragging his dead body by the hair to relieve the long-held fear and anxiety of his devotees, especially Vasudeva and Devaki. He's really dead. And that he, their beloved Lord, and mixed Vatsalya and Aishvarya understanding of Vasudeva and Devaki, our son, killed this terrible demon. Just expanded their love and appreciation by unlimited multiplication. That's why Krishna killed Kamsa. Or one of the main motivations to kill Kamsa was to enliven his devotees. So that's the ultimate heart of this pastime. But along the way, there's so much lesson to be learned. The sages, the four Kumars, now reject their cursing of the two doorkeepers, Jai and Vijay, because they are now conscious that persons who engage in the service of the Lord cannot be at fault in any stage. So we should ask ourselves, are we actually engaged in the service of the Lord so we can be qualified to be in this position of not being at fault in any stage? I don't think so. Just like a judge in trying to ascertain the weight of offense and the mitigating factors, and we also hear the victim statement, what the crime that the alleged person did, how it impacted, the level of criminality. And also they want to see, is there remorse? There's no such thing as overlooking and moving on unless there is actual regret on the part of the person making the offense or persons making the offense. It's the idea that, and even in devotional service or in the ISKCON movement, it's not enough to say, well, they did this and that, and the implications of it. but, they're doing this, which is very good. Yes and no. The main thing is that no one should be doing whatever it is they're doing, even if they're very talented and proficient at it, out of personal ambition for name, fame, profit, adoration, and distinction. Prabhupada stressed that book distribution is a very important service, even went as far as to say in the Bhāgavatam, which he stressed, my books are the law books for the next 10,000 years. In our Krishna consciousness movement, all activities are centered around distributing Krishna literature. One can approach any person and engage and induce him to read Krishna literature so that in the future he will become a devotee. And Prabhupada, during his presence, so much stressed transcendental book distribution, but it became, we see young people, young men with their passion and not completely purified material desires, or even understanding the extent of their material desires, using their youth and strength and vigor to engage in book distribution, which is absolutely necessary. Well, it's useful, maybe not absolutely necessary, and old or infirm, or there was one devotee who was very successful distributing books in a wheelchair. I forget his name. Anyway. Huh? He passed on, yeah. There was another one, he was from an Oriental background. It was like in the 80s. Anyway, it's very useful to have youth, strength, vim, vigor, sharp intellectual and mental dexterity, having the gift of gab, etc. But if one becomes proud and thinks that because this is such an important service, therefore it's the best service, or what to speak of, the only service, and then one offends other devotees, or one thinks oneself completely right to, or have the carte blanche to utilize the facilities or the opportunities that other devotees have gotten from their devotional service to more or less misappropriate such things for their own idea of what's best in progress, then this is an offense. And Prabhupada, people tried to put words in Prabhupada's mouth. Prabhupada tried to get Prabhupada to say that book distribution is the best service. What will please you the most? There's that book that the BBT made in recent years, If You Want to Please Me. And Prabhupada at that time replied, if you love Krishna. There was one Mataji, a Prabhupada disciple, I'm sorry, her name doesn't come to mind, and she was made to feel by the senior men and these big preaching book distributors that she was inferior, because not only was she a woman, but she was a mother with 2 small children. And she just wanted to get Prabhupada's darshan and association and reveal her deep anxiety, her feeling of inferiority that other devotees made her feel like. And she just simply burst into Prabhupada's room she came into Prabhupada's room and she just burst into tears. All of this deep held anxiety and sorrow just came out, and she started to cry. Prabhupada, I can't please you. I'm a woman. I have 2 small children. And Prabhupada just gave her the most beautiful oceanic smile and asked her, are you reading my books? And she was, she said, whatever the books were coming out, I'd get my hand and read them right away. And she said, yes. And then Prabhupada said, then you are pleasing me. So if we are basing our idea of success in Krishna consciousness and it's at the expense of others, then we should really, really look at ourselves, try to catch ourselves before the volume of such things over time build up. And Krishna, from his side, he's very expert and intelligent, and he will create a situation that will dismantle our false pride. And unfortunately, sometimes that means that our ability to do the so-called highest service is impaired or even stopped, or what to speak of given up. That we have seen. So that's one example of a classic example that one shouldn't become proud. If one seemingly has more facility in devotional service than another, one should be very, very careful. It's actually said, who is it, in the instructions of Maharaj Prithu, that all our problems of life come from 3 mistakes, or one mistake in 3 different categories. If we see someone more qualified than ourselves, then we become envious. And with equals and contemporaries who we should make friendship, we engage in unnecessary jockeying for position and competition to prove ourselves better. And if someone is inferior means younger, junior, just beginning, less experienced than us, then we try to lord it over them instead of trying to be very friendly and encouraging and give them all facility to come as quickly as possible to a higher and more favorable position. So Prabhupada has said that your greatest love for me will be shown by how much you cooperate together. So this cooperation together requires great finesse and very high Brahminical qualification. We see yesterday in Mahatma Prabhu's class how he analyzed things from so many different angles of vision with a very sober temperament in a short period of time. He's very much known for that in his looking at everything from his deep view of the understanding of the Shastra and his 50-plus years of experience in the Krishna consciousness movement. And we have that video from 1970 of Prabhupada putting the Brahmin thread directly on his body and grinning with full mouth and teeth showing. And Mahatma gives the realization that Prabhupada was very, very happy to increase the number of brahmanas. And we see that Prabhupada said in so many places that the society does not have a head. It's simply capitalism is of the Vaishyas and communism is of the Sudras. Where are the Kshatriyas and where are the Brahmanas? So one of his duties or responsibilities in coming here to this world was to create Brahmanas. So Brahmanas are independently thoughtful personalities who see things from many angles of vision. Siddhanta Prabhu has done something very wonderful. I hope he does more. He re-interviewed Yogeshwar for 1 hour, and he's telling his memories, some of them which were most meaningful to him. I think he could do more than an hour. And which he had done, he had interviewed Yogeshwar early on, like probably 28 or 30 years ago. And he says right at the inception that time is very, very valuable. So I've taken my Prabhupada memories, which are like valuable jewels that upon, just like the Bhagavad Gita, one can refer to it and get new meanings from it. And now those things that my understanding of it has grown and grown. From one action or statement or association of Prabhupada, it's enough to enliven you and to teach you for what to speak of for your entire life, but for all of eternity. That's how valuable the memories of the actions, thoughts, endeavors, association of such a pure devotee as Srila Prabhupada are. It is said that anyone who has implicit faith in the service of the Lord, or who actually engages in trance-loving service, as all the good qualities of the demigods. Therefore, a devotee cannot be at fault. The fault, or let's say roughness, or perhaps not perfectional way of doing things, or it could have been done better. Krishna, that is in the framework of Tesham Satata Yuktanam, giving the intelligence how to come to me. How to come to me means how to be a harmonious, cooperative devotee. And it's just like the four Kumars are saying, this is not harmonious activity in the Vaikuntha planets, where everyone is of the same sublime mentality. So this Krishna consciousness movement is, Prabhupada has said, it's like a hospital and curing the disease of material life. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati has said, in this world of troubles and aversion to the Lord, only patience, tolerance, and humility are our friends to get us through. One devotee came to Prabhupada criticizing his godbrothers and pointing out so many mistakes. And Prabhupada said, what do you want? They're trying to be devotees. Or there was one of Srila Prabhupada's most beloved disciples who had done so much to expand the movement. He was in a position in the mid-70s when he was GBC of a very important project, and there was some discrepancy in his behavior and in his ability or way of performing that duty, legitimate concerns, and Prabhupada did not want to hear it at all from the temple president and the leading devotees. He was just remembering the service of this devotee. Ultimately, the position was changed. That particular devotee was changed in that position. But the lesson to be learned from that, how much Prabhupada put emphasis on what the devotee had done and how dear he was to him, and how unwanted and undesirable it was to hear criticism of this devotee. So perhaps instead of just listing the discrepancies factually, it should have been done by those junior godbrothers in a much more loving and knowing way, and Prabhupada would have responded differently. Yogeshvara, you should listen. It's Prabhupada Memories number 89. If you look on YouTube, Prabhupada Memories, boom, it's one of the first things that comes up. He's saying that Prabhupada was very expert in relating to the mood of sincerity that the disciple, and what to speak of people in general, would approach him. And he knew exactly what to say according to this time, place, and circumstance. So Yogeshvar was saying it's a fault that we take Prabhupada quotes and just apply them blindly or haphazardly, not understanding who Prabhupada was speaking to and what was the situation when that statement was made or that instruction was given. Sometimes it is found that he is in error by accident or by some temporary arrangement, that should not be taken very seriously. Faith in the purifying process of devotional service. Giriraj Swami tells the story of Crazy Peter, who joined in the Boston Temple in 1969, 1970. And of course, Giriraj Swami, such a qualified devotee, Satsvarup Maharaj said when he was sent to Boston, Beantown, really rough, hard city. And this was practically the only really good devotee that they had made up to that time, 1969. And Prabhupada, he wanted the best devotees in the movement and the World Sankirtan Party. So Giriraj Swami was out of Boston, out of the United States, and became such an important personality for the Juhu Bombay project. So this crazy Peter at the time was very, very eccentric. His cleanliness was not very good, his ability to communicate, but he loved devotional service. And the devotees were complaining about him, he's not fit to live in the temple, and what should we do with him? And Prabhupada's response was, you should be tolerant, or don't you know you should tolerate. And they did. 20 years later, Giriraj Swami is in Los Angeles, 1990, and he sees Crazy Peter 20 years later, and he's asking the devotees, who is that? Oh, that's Kushakrata. Who became one of the main and first devotees translating. He learned Sanskrit, and he was translating all of the most important Goswami literatures. So did Prabhupada know who Crazy Peter was and what he was capable of? Certainly. Yet, but at the same time, somebody comes in here and, we have our post office, most wanted list, not allowed in the temple. It's not that we, lay down our discrimination. So we're very careful to protect the deities and the devotees from offenders. The cursing of Jai and Vijay is here repented. Now the Kumaras are thinking in terms of their position in the modes of passion and ignorance, and they are prepared to accept any kind of punishment. Similarly, Maharaj Parikshit, he regretted his action of picking up the dead snake and offering it as a garland for what he considered the cold reception of Samika Rishi. And then his 12-year-old son, Shringi, grossly overestimated the so-called offense and cursing him to die. And then Samika Rishi took no offense whatsoever. He just took the dead snake off and threw it aside. And when he heard that Maharaj Parikshit was cursed, he greatly said, you have done a terrible wrong thing, and then just listed all the terrible things that are going to happen. People will systematically fall from Varnashram. The rogues and thieves will take over. This is a terrible thing that you've done. And ultimately, it was ascertained that this was the Leela of the Lord. And for the boys, forgiveness, they're just because he's 12 years old. And we see even minors, if they commit an offense, they're not held as accountable as someone of age. That only the Supreme Lord can forgive him. And Maharaj Parikshit, from his side, he greatly regretted his action. In general, when dealing with devotees, we should not try to find faults. In Bhagavad Gita, it is also confirmed that devotees who faithfully serve the Supreme Lord, even if found to commit a gross mistake, should be considered the sadhu or saintly person. That's Abhichet Sudaracharo Bhajate Mamananya Bhak, Krishna himself saying. Due to former habits, he may commit some wrong, but because he is engaged in the service of the Lord, that wrong should not be taken very seriously. And Prabhupada tells the story of the Bengali pilgrims, and one thief trying to reform himself goes with the pilgrimage party, and at night, his old habit, like to steal, because at night's a very good time to steal because everybody's asleep, right? He starts going through everybody's bags, and he'd move them around, and then finally, his good conscience kicks in and said, what am I doing? And then he tried to put everything back, but he wasn't successful, and everyone wakes up in the morning, hey, why'd you take my thing? Why is my thing over there? And said, my dear gentleman, My previous life was a thief, and I'm trying to reform myself. I caught myself doing it, that you'll find that nothing has been stolen, and I couldn't remember where to put everything back. Please forgive me. So, due to our former habits, but Prabhupada says in the purport, one who does not reform himself or falls back on this, and repeatedly, is not a very high devotee. Amarendra Prabhu, I don't know if he asked the question, but he heard the question asked, how do you show love for the spiritual master? And he thought that the answer would be that you have all these feelings in your heart and all this love and prema. And Prabhupada said, love is shown for the spiritual master by keeping the vows that you made at initiation. And just that sobered everybody up right away. You've promised before the Lord, before the deity, before the spiritual master, before the Vaishnavas, before the fire. A gentleman keeps his word, his honest word. So initiation is a very serious affair. And we see so much concern or question, who is the bona fide spiritual master? Who should I accept as my spiritual master? Equally, if not more of an important contemplation, who is or am I a qualified disciple? Krishna has said that for one who is actually sincere, he personally sends the spiritual master. So, any questions or comments on this verse and subject matter? Yes.
It seems that Prabhupada was referring in the verse to the chapter 9 of the Bhagavad Gita, where it says even if you're keep failing, and you just mentioned that in your thing. Mm-hmm. I was wondering how that is related to the seventh offense of chanting the holy name, of committing sinful activities on the strength of the holy name.
Yeah, like it said, the one that doesn't, how does it? Bhagavad Gita, please. Bhagavad Gita, please. Prabhupada says it right there, you know. It's up on the shelf. No? Oh, maybe it got put in here. Okay, somebody look it up on their player real quick.
What verse do you want?
9, Apichetsadaracharo, the purport. You can even read it, the bottom of the, that particular point at the bottom of the purport. This, yeah, he's got it.
I think he's still a devotee. If it does not improve in his character by devotional service, then it is to be understood he is not a high devotee.
Again, one shouldn't take advantage. Prabhupada even at one point gave a number. 1 time, 2 time, 3 time. After that, no more. But then again, sometimes one could reasonably considered in particular situation to have been treated improperly or injudiciously, and one naturally, or as a normal human feeling, one loses one's enthusiasm. This is the Krishna consciousness movement, and this is what these people have done to me, and they're devotees. So, when they fall back into their old habits, and then it takes a very genuine devotee, maybe like an old friend or an associate, to re-enliven them and try it again in a different situation, in different association. For example, many times that happens. Again, we're holding the keys, or where we got the title, or we got the position. And then Mahatma Prabhu was saying yesterday, even you you have a couple of gray hairs, automatically you're an example setter, you know. Therefore, in the temple, everyone should be here strictly for devotional service, not for any other ulterior purpose, because that sets a bad example. And if you're here for devotional service, then you will automatically create an enlivening and enthusing atmosphere around yourself that others will want to take advantage of if they also want Krishna consciousness and pure devotional service. So we help keep each other afloat. You know, if somebody's having trouble swimming, I was in Jones Beach like 10 or 12 years ago, and I was just taking a little swim, and there was a riptide, and before I knew it, I was just like yanked out, you know, like a good number of yards from the shore, and like a lifeguard, before I knew it, just had like put his arm completely around my body and just like pulled me right out, you know. So that's devotee association. So we have a great responsibility. Anything else?
You were mentioning about cooperation, and then
yeah, that's why I don't like to go swimming in the ocean anymore.
Srila Prabhupada, you're quoting Srila Prabhupada saying that you'll show my love for me by how you cooperate. And
yeah.
so I was thinking that in the Bhāgavatam we have this example of Vidura, who actually tried to cooperate very much, but then he had a point where he
yes, that was his
here.
Cooperation.
Mm-hmm. I was thinking,
take your leave, because staying in a situation where more offenses are made, or more stagnation, or just discord, then the cooperation is to leave that association. Madhu Dvis and Tamal Krishna were in the Lasyanga temple, and they were both at loggerheads with each other. You know, they each wanted to be in control, but each one wanted to do it a little bit of a different way. So it reached Prabhupada. And what did Prabhupada do? He sent Madhu Dvis to be the temple president of San Francisco and be in charge in putting on the world festival for the entire ISKCON society in 1970. There's only one Rath Yatra in the whole world, San Francisco. And Madhu said, you could listen to the memory. He said, wow, I could be the my own temple president, you know? And then Tamal Krishna, so they separate, two rams, instead of button heads, let them become the king of their own castle, right? That's cooperation. And he put on such a grand Rath Yatra, Madhu Dvis. It was such a, and then, Family Dog Auditorium. I have come to turn all the hippies into happies. 20,000 people chant, dance, and when you're tired, take prasadam. Amazing footage you should all watch in the following Srila Prabhupada. And then Prabhupada is leaving in the airport, and Madhu Dvis, such a moving pastime that even devotees, in their own Prabhupada memories, Bahulasva, he became the liaison for Stilson Judah and other scholars in Southern California to meet Prabhupada and stuff. So he's leaving his body, and he's in his departure bed, and he's being interviewed, and he's there. He was one of the men under Madhu Dvis putting on the Rath Yatra. He's telling the story. And he started crying that Madhu Dvis, Prabhupada's in the car, and he kneels down with the car door open. Prabhupada, how did you like it? And Prabhupada just hugged him and just rubbed his back up and down and just said, I loved it. So from one situation which was unfavorable, in another situation which is more favorable. Anything else? But at the same time, Prabhupada's wanting to expand the movement, and Madhav Dweis and Tamal Krishna were two of his main generals in the army. Madhav Dweis, Prabhupada knew giving young men in their 20s sannyas was risky, and there would definitely be. And Prabhupada's view was that, the devotional service and propagating and spreading this movement to save all the living entities in the universe is by far more superior to varnashram, one's position. And he very much encouraged Madhav Dweis to go on after giving up sannyas, whereas the immaturity of devotees at the time, was like to shame him or to humiliate him. And Prabhupada was very upset with that. So this is the heart of a Vaishnava, that engage in Krishna consciousness no matter what. Do not stop. How important it is to renovate your devotional relationship with Krishna against all odds. It's the only thing that Prabhupada wanted. There was a morning walk early on in the 1960s, and there was one, they would walk past, Prabhupada would walk past with the devotees, and there was one very old man, and he was parked by the park, and he was like in the front seat of his car, and he was like slumped over, and he had a very sad and dejected look on his face. Maybe he was a widower, his wife died, no family, he's old, and he's just like depressed and hopeless. And 2-3 times mornings, and Prabhupada walked past, and then, motioned just by Prabhupada's presence, and the man rolled down his window, and Prabhupada said, "How are you?" and "Good morning," and Hare Krishna to him. And the man just lit up, and just a very brief exchange, and when the devotees turned back and looked at the man, and all his unhappiness and dejection and depression were gone, and he just looked so bright and effulgent and happy. And the devotee realized that Prabhupada really wanted to make people happy, and he knew how to do it. So that is our spiritual master, and we should follow him and understand that he's completely empowered. He's the Senapata Bhakta. He's the very great devotee of Lord Chaitanya at this time. And everything is there. How to do it, whatever it is, Prabhupada has the answer. All right. Grantaraj Śrimad Bhāgavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Shri Radha Govinda ki jai. Nitai Gaur Premanandi Haribol.
His Grace Ram Roy Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.